This is mostly ancient history.
All right.
I'm asking you.
How ancient?
Or
Sumerian?
Not that ancient. We're going back to your ancient history.
Oh.
And we're gonna also focus around the J-Lot. And there's only 10 questions here. It looks like one was added, but I'm just going to let you talk, whatever you want to talk about freely. I'm just going to ask you the first question and we'll continue.
Yeah, I just prefer it be more of a conversation rather than a. The other makes me feel as though I'm testifying, and I'm prepared to do that as well.
Okay, raise your right hand and put your left hand on the Bible here.
Yeah.
Or was it your right hand that's supposed to be?
And as long as we're in a closed session, so help me God.
Yeah, conversation is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I'm working on that subpoena. I talked to a big time attorney, and we were talking different things, and we can discuss that at a different time.
Yeah, he's a great guy too. He's a good guy. He's experienced at high level.
As I was saying to Bill on the way over here, I was ordered to present a copy of my order to meet him at St. Mark's Square. That order contains an initial of a committee member, a coded initial of a committee member. From what I understand, there's currently a 17-16 split. And this is mostly rumor around the community to forward a public acclamation program having to do with the Majestic 12 and the overseeing committee, the old 5412, which is now basically called the Committee of the Majority, as far as I'm told.
The questions are just to give us a little structure.
Well, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Well, that's interesting news. And if I say something or one of them says something, just answer, talk to me.
That's fine.
Keep going between you and Bill.
The lights are cumbersome, but
A little much? Okay.
that's fine.
All right.
That's fine. That's fine. If you look closely, they're nice and red from looking through the scope all last night, so they can't get much worse.
Oh, okay. Okay, the first question, Dan, they want to know is, where did you work in the mid-90s, and how did you come to be employed there?
Well, several locations in the mid-90s. I had some cover positions here in Las Vegas, which made me look like a good old-fashioned Joe. In fact, I had some police experience at the late 80s. You're probably centering your question around the work for the government. In 1986, I was approached while working as an undergraduate student in Dr. Bert Bell Barbero's office in his parasitology laboratory, to be exact. I was looking through a scope at the time. Three gentlemen walked into the laboratory, closed the door behind them. There was 2 uniforms and a suit that were present. Both of the uniforms I would make as most probably being United States Navy. My memory of that one event's kind of hazy after seeing all of the suits and uniforms and whatnot. We spoke for a while. They asked me if I was interested in seeing the world and the like. I told them I in fact was. We went through several interview processes, not unlike this, and reviewed my background. I went through several background investigations. Finally, starting up 90-91 time frame, I was cleared for working past groom to the Papoose Mountain facility, that place that doesn't exist, about 90 miles north of here, the nowhere place. That's how I came to work there. My original assignment was at the Groom Lake facility to review histopathology slides. And I went through nearly a year's testing and then was basically let loose for a year, and I heard no contact from them. After that, I was brought back in and shown some higher grade slides of unknown origin. Following that, I was introduced into a working group and subsequently brought into the Papoose facility, the Site 4 facility. We worked for well over a year on slides of unknown origin. After I took a minimum leadership position under several of the other biologists who are already present, most of which are now deceased. You know the names of those individuals. I was then introduced into the level 4-5 facility, and the 4-5 coded for 9. You're again aware, we covered this in ancient history. And so what we did is introduce the new members, myself amongst them, into the clean sphere area, and we were eventually shown the subject for which we were examining the slides. The slides were unusual in that they were in pressurized cells, and they were reviewed by us on a conveyor with a completely automatic microscope. We weren't touching anything. We'd give verbal commands. At the second instance, we were finally allowed to have a VRML-like keyboard for examining the slides, and I digressed, but then working with the JROD itself in the ambassadorial suite or the clean sphere suite.
Now, was this under this Project Aquarius?
Yes, yes. Initially, I was assigned as a working member of Project Aquarius. Then finally, I was made an assistant working group leader. And then mysteriously, after one meeting with the JROD, I was asked to take the working group leader position. I didn't find out why I was asked to take the working group leader position until, well, within this last year. I never understood it because Stephen was older than I. He was my senior not only in ability but in age, and I would have never figured being advanced above an individual like that in ranking within a working group. And in fact, I never considered myself above him. We worked together. The Q94 document that you have in your possession was co-authored. My name went on there as the primary investigator because I was the working group leader. But in fact, he and I were both involved in the authoring of that document.
Oh. Okay. Now, could you explain briefly what you were briefed on who and or what JROD was?
Initially, I was briefed that JROD was an alien, specifically from the reticulum system, to reticulum 4. I had no idea the truth. Yes, from 2 reticulum 4 now, but I had no idea the truth of how they came to be. As I said to you before, I have never met an alien, but I have met an extraterrestrial. I found out subsequent to interactions with the JROD. And again, they have personal names. The term JROD simply means 15, which was a basing name for where they're located, the number of light years from our location. So they took those names. And they identified through the Sigma protocols, the linguistic protocols, with a rod symbol, which was an inertia symbol, and the letter J. And in fact, that was a combination of Mayan and Egyptian numerology having to do with a rod and a J, meaning 10 and 5 for 15.
Okay. Now, 15 light years away, is that the police 876?
876 Charlie, from what I've been told. Now, he did not specifically tell me that was the location, but the number 15 was mentioned.
Well,
They don't call it, apparently, Gliese 876, whatever,
how
Charlie.
did J-Rod get here? I mean, how did he, 15 light years away?
He crashed in 63, from what I understand,
Oh, was that right?
outside of Kingman,
Okay,
Arizona.
right.
There was a problem involving his physiology and his biophysiological communication with the craft went wrong. And of course, he's ill, as we know, with the MGUS and the paraprotein associated problems. And he crashed.
And how was he transported immediately from that crash site to the S4 facility? And how is
That I don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know.
You don't know how he came to be at the facility? in
I,
the
be-
first place?
I believe he and associates were transferred separately. He to the originally to the Groom Lake facility, and an associate to, I believe, Los Alamos.
Los Alamos.
I have no independent verification of where the associate went, though. All I can say is that he was there at Site 4.
Now, you interacted with J-Rod. Was there a general procedure for this interaction?
Well, there was not a general procedure. There was a very specific procedure.
Very specific, okay.
After we would be brought in with our helper biologists, there was controlling helper biologists, those in the gallery, and then the introduction specialist, which was myself on a number of occasions. We entered the clean sphere through a large series of protocols involving pressurization and compartmentalization, no pun intended, until finally we were pressurized in fully encapsulated a TEC, a TES, total encapsulated suit for entrance into the clean sphere. Once we were pressurized and entered into the clean sphere, well, I should digress. We had a medical evaluation, all of that first. But they ceased doing that after a couple medical evaluations. It was more just interested, let's get you in and get the work done. I would enter into the clean sphere, and I was not supposed to communicate with the J-Rod at all. I was not supposed to know his name. The reality is we were communicating from the time that I entered into the ambassadorial suite external to the clean sphere, talking back and forth freely. I could hear whatever he was projecting at me from thought, and he could very clearly hear what I was thinking. I say hear, meaning perceive. I was supposed to stand over by a hologram projection system, which was run as like a teleprompter system, over to my right, that would be run inside of the clean sphere glass. Hold my hand up and mimic certain signs. And it became a joke. It really did. It became a joke. Those folks who were watching from the gallery running the show thought that I was standing there and mimicking the signs, and this was the only communication underway. They perceived on the day that the approach, the close approach that he made, the grabbing incident that he did with me, they perceived that there was a communication that occurred. So I began getting questioned quite extensively whether or not he in fact was communicating with me, because he had promised not to, apparently, with the Sigma unit. I alluded to the fact that there was conversation underway, but I didn't talk about what it was until, of course, I was caught in my research protocol forwarding ideas that were somewhat different than what they expected, where they expected my private research was going to go, and this is much later. And at that time, the deal was brokered to find out about the doctrine for the convergent timeline paradox. I told them a little bit about what he showed me, a little bit, and they told me a little bit about the DCTP.
Now that you brought that up, which implies travel through time as well as space, and you said that J-Rod was retrieved from a crash near Kingman. Was he at that time just traveling through space from the staging area, or?
Yes.
No? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
He wasn't doing any time traveling at that point?
No, not as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
Not as far as he told me, no.
Can you describe J-Rod to us, what he looked like and how he behaved?
Yes. The gentleman with which I was associated was approximately 3.5 feet tall. He had a dark brown appearance, very ruddy appearance to his skin. He was in a highly pressurized clean sphere. He exuded glycoprotein-like material through pores on his skin, which was associated with the neuritis, the neuropathy that with which we were dealing.
Did this have an odor to it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I couldn't perceive any odors whatsoever. I was inside my. But I would imagine, but I have no data set to say what it would have smelled like. And in fact, there was nothing I read that indicated whether or not there was an odor. Why?
Okay.
I'm wondering. You've asked that before, and that's why I'm wondering.
Well, yeah, I've heard about this, a secretion coming through the pores of the skin before, and there have been those who've had encounters who say they can smell an odor
Okay,
from the skin.
all right. Where were we?
You were describing.
3.5 feet, large head in comparison to torso. So the ratio of the cranial to the torso area would be larger than in what we would call a modern human being. Large bulbous black eyes. The whites of the eyes had been selected out. So it looked like a large pupil, basically. When you look into his eyes, you feel like you're going to fall into his eyes forever. And I think that probably had something to do with the telepathic nature of his mental structure. Large arms, large length. 4 very thin, sinuous fingers. Nails, not as long as presented in some of the images that you've showed me in the past. The ones done by Tom Mack, was it? Tom?
Bill Ugas.
Oh, yeah, that's it, the Puppet Master photos. I'm smiling because the Puppet Master leads me to other nicknames. But he was hunched over most of the time, could not support himself fully, given muscular atrophy. And that had to do with the peripheral neuropathy under which he was suffering. So he would grunt and move toward me almost in a flopping fashion. Feet were large in comparison to what we would, say our feet would be. He was unclothed 4. Yeah, he was unclothed, which bothered him. He wanted to wear clothing and was refused in every turn. Called himself captive, and justifiably so. His feet were unusual in that his the plantar area had a very large knob underneath what we would call our heel. His facial features were grotesque in comparison to what he showed me what normal would be. He was
Normal of his type.
yes, yes. He was bilaterally symmetrical to the extent that the disease process was not changing his facial figures, his features. Nose was recessed, not a nose like we have, but basically two opercula, 2 orifices. An extremely small mouth, a hard palate, no teeth. His musculature, again, it was suffering from the problem at the myoneural junction due to the neuropathy.
Do you have any idea what his chronological age was?
622.
622.
And that I don't know. That I don't know. That number 622 is now used as an important number within the community. A reference, a request from 622 or a report from 622 could be from anybody. So it's used, and in fact the SRB report that I have with me today, the supplemental report for 0302 that I have, probably is labeled from reviewer 622. I haven't, again, it's going to be a cold reading when we look at it, but it's probably from 622. They excrete in a manner that we would excrete. Their external genitalia are different than ours. The females have somewhat like vulva, but they have a clasper situation. The male has a male clasper, the female claspers. And if it looks like a disc with rectangular solids that are rotated into position for clasping at the inguinal region. They do have internal fertilization.
Now, this was something you read because you didn't see a female, did you?
No, this is something he showed me of his wife.
Oh, in Charlie.
Yes.
And how was that image presented to you? Did it appear?
I was inside the image.
You were inside the image,
That's what it felt like.
like virtual reality?
Yes, everything that he showed me when this was the incident. When he projected it into me, it felt like I was there. My sensations were heightened. Quite extraordinary.
Mm-hmm. Was there a background perceived? Was she in a domicile of some sort?
Again, excuse the pun, a gray surrounding, very, very dull, drab surrounding, almost like a concrete evacuation center, where you'd have evacuation zones underneath the hotels in case of a mass casualties or a mass disaster, where it was a very clinical environment.
Huh. So were you impressed that he was kind of depressed about his situation?
He was extremely depressed. If we were to term him human, I'm not a psychologist, but I think he would be termed as clinically depressed.
Okay.
He wept, but he didn't weep outside. He wept when he was with me.
Well, could you estimate what his level of intellect was?
Smarter than me. He was smarter than me by a long range.
Did he have a wide range of knowledge?
The mathematics that he showed me blew my mind.
Was that right?
He showed me concurrently not only the equations for the rule of nines, but he also did so diagrammatically, and he did so with three-dimensional, like a VRML system, where I was watching cubes come together. So that if I was not understanding the script, I would understand it as a child learns group theory in mathematics. Highly evolved, highly intellectual, highly repressed emotionally. When I was with him, I felt great happiness to be with him, but I could feel his great sadness, not only because of what he wanted to become, what he knew he was by being present with us, but where he was and how he was being treated. He was not part of the group that has to be catered to involving the T9 treaty that was just signed. He wanted to help. He was willing. When I went in, for God's sakes, I took well over, nearly 300 individualized aspiration samples from his neurological system. He would hold his arm out for me to take them. There was no pain medication. And whenever I would fire the introduction system to remove the sample, it was an aspirative avulsion system, he would cry, and then he would just stand there and look at me.
There was a suction.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I would bring the sample after the initial removal from his tissues into the introduction system, and then approve it and move it from there to one of the helper biologists. Usually it was Robert, outside of the clean sphere, and then he would move it from there to be handled under our normal protocols. It was a level 5 past our the BMBL system. He'd just stand there and take it.
So, do you feel the communication that he established with you when you were in contact with him, could he extend this communication over any distance?
60 feet,
60 feet?
definitely 60 feet.
Okay.
It was
So-
60 feet from the center of the clean sphere to the introduction ramp going down into the ambassadorial suite. So at least 60 feet.
So you don't feel like he's been in communication with you since that time?
No.
Okay.
Is it selective in some way? Was it willfully selective on his part, who he wanted to communicate?
Yes. Yes. The folks that, I'm sorry, the folks that wanted to find out what he was saying to me, they knew darn well that he was communicating with me after a while, because I was smiling. I couldn't help it, because we were actually joking back and forth. And, you know, they didn't know. They didn't have any clue. They didn't have any clue what he was saying. So it had to have been selective. They certainly wouldn't have pressed me like they did after I woke up from the big attention scenario. I woke up outside of the clean sphere. I was drug out of there by Stephen. He finally got a secondary suit on and drugged me out of the clean sphere. No, they had no clue. They had no clue what he was saying. I'm sure of it. They were extra rough in removing my plug and my catheter and all of that business after I got out of the TES.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to ask you now, departing slightly from this subject, we're going to ask this last question, then we're going to take a break, okay? And then we'll see where we go from there. But
I'm smiling because I'm envisioning the lack of the lights.
yeah, okay. But everybody's
Yeah, I don't
been
like this
asking
at all.
me, why, and of course, you're gonna have to restate this again, why are you talking to us now? What is your intention in telling us about this, about your involvement?
It's multifocal. It's multifocal. There's several reasons. The largest reason is not the most important reason. The largest reason from a personal perspective is to step out from under the Black Ops community and retire. I'm ready. I told you before, I can see myself walking along a pond and not being bothered by anybody except for maybe a bird here or there, and taking a sample and just taking my time and looking at it for fun, for enjoyment.
And you're worried about your health, right?
Well, my health is degrading. There's no doubt about that. The heart disease that I have is in fact degrading my health. Time is coming. I don't know how long that is, and of course that's within God's providence.
So you'd
I-
like to maybe have some freedom, to have some
Yes.
time of your own?
Yes.
To go to Walden's Pond or something, right? Study the life.
Disappear at Walden's Pond.
Right.
There are other reasons too. You know, without yelling the poor me scenario. Yes, people have a right to know. I mean, that's, you know, other folks have screamed that. Some of them, I think, real. Some of them phony as a $3 bill. Yes, they have a right to know what is going on. They have a right to know because this is their future. Or maybe not. And it depends upon our wisdom or lack thereof. This gets me thinking. The one thing that we've heard from the Brookings Institution study, the famous clamp study, was this would cause a great social upheaval. It would destroy our social bonds, our religious bonds. And in fact, I know I'm digressing, but I ramble. Every time an individual is approached with the issue of, would this destroy your faith? I have heard, it's my experience only, I'm sure there are going to be varied opinions, no, it'd strengthen it. It'd strengthen it. From a certain perspective, yes. From another perspective, no. The Brookings Institution was correct on a certain level. Suspend disbelief for a moment and walk with the idea that this is real. That the ruins that are present on the moon and on Mars, the ancient temples, were in fact, and are in fact, the gifts of our own progeny. Can you imagine what is going to happen when those temples, which were prayed to as the gods, are found out to be nothing more than the creations of men? That the men themselves were those who were being worshipped, will fall headlong into the pool of Narcissus. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we'll find truth, love, God, in something other than buildings and stones and marble. Maybe we'll find out who he really is, or she, it, or just us.
Can we take a break?
Please.
Take 5 minutes, yeah,
Okay.
take 5 minutes and talk about what we just talked about.
Yeah.
I missed a little bit about the clean sphere entrance in terms of suiting up, preparing yourself. You did mention the medical exams, which fade
Right.
out after a while.
Right.
But in the other tape, you talked a little bit more about some of the mechanical specifics, just to give a better image of
That's fine.
what it's like for you to do it.
That's fine.
Okay, that was
The
one.
introduction gantry, the swinging
The
hose
swing
systems
goes
and all
up.
that.
Yes, those things. Yeah, they're just
That's all visual, and I'm interested in the Dulce facility.
Uh,
Training what you're
Hold
talking
on,
about.
hold on. One thing at a time. One thing at a time. The other thing is
We can wait with
that
that.
might be pertinent to what you just did, what you just spoke about, was what you were looking at slide-wise prior to knowing what the unknown origin material was, what its origin was.
Sure.
You know, just what it was you were looking at.
All right.
Without
You
revealing.
want me to get into the microbial?
Well, maybe just a general statement of what that was,
All right.
what you thought you were looking at. Just to give us a little bit.
That's a good one.
You know,
'Cause I had no clue, and in fact, they brought in who we got on our side, a biochemist to turn our attitudes around. And after about a year, he didn't turn our attitudes around. He finally joined us. And finally said, no, we can't do this without finding out the origin of the tissue.
I see.
Right. We needed to find out. See, we were dealing with it. We were dealing with a situation where it was in vitro. They were.
We might want to go back on camera for this, so.
That's fine. Okay.
And the other thing that I think you made a very good statement about why you're doing this. I wonder if there's anything else we can do for you, anything else you can say that is of value to you that we can record for you, as far as what you hope to, how you hope to get out, what it is about. I mean, you said it's your health and a number of other things. I'm just wanted to put it to you that if there's anything else that comes to mind that you'd like to add in that regard, in terms of
Yeah.
what it is you're trying to accomplish. Because I know
I would like
realize-
to tell our elected government what we're doing
Maybe you should say that. You know, I mean,
under the appropriate circumstances, because there are military applications that need to be handled in a very careful manner.
for example.
For example,
I understand. All
and
right.
those
Understood.
issues we're going to be extremely careful about here today, because they should be taken with great care,
Of course, our objective, which
including the military applications for Lotus.
I know that we're somewhat constrained for time today. Well, how much longer do we have?
It's only 16:37.
How much time do we have?
We've got time.
Okay.
I have to be back at 1900,
1900, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay, we have plenty of time.
All right, fine. Okay, good.
We're not in a
All right.
rush.
Well, what I wanted to do was, the only other thing I had to say was we're trying to focus on, and it's been great so far, it's been very focused, it's very, very central to the J-Rod interaction. We felt that was the best way to introduce you to our next stage.
Right.
Now, we can talk about anything we want. We got plenty of tape, as long as you can stand the lights. You know, I beyond the three things I just mentioned, anything you might want to bring up.
Do you think
So
that
in
thing is
order.
real? Do you think that thing is real?
What's that?
That piece of paper you showed me, the letters. I don't know. See, we spoke about another individual who has a heart condition. I figured that it was a need to know. It was a need to know basis above that. I didn't figure that there was direct. See, and the rumors coming at me about the potential for public acclamation, that would be for him, those initials to take back as the hero in this situation, because he loves playing the hero. And you show me a piece of paper that says ordered to remain. Ostensibly, that's what it meant. Ordered to remain in the capacity, which means that there is a greater loop. I've had the chance to speak with the individual one time, and he was funnier than hell. He really was. I heard that there was a transcript involving that got out. In fact, I was shown one time. The first meeting, the one where I bolted, the one where you scared the hell out of me, not as much as you did today, but in a little more relaxed circumstance.
I infer their use, and I've seen this elsewhere, of the word bird refers to EVE.
Mm-hmm.
I infer their use of the word clock refers to the timeline paradox.
Mm-hmm. I would buy that.
Before we, let's talk a little bit about the things we just discussed. What was it that you thought you were looking at when you were looking at these slides of material of unknown origin?
Well,
prior to meeting J-Rod.
we were looking at extremely minute microglial cells. We knew that they were eukaryotic. However, they were unusual in the sense that their cytoplasm and their internal organization, the organelle structures were fused, such as dictyosomes to mitochondria, things like that. And we had no idea what we were looking at. The original contention made by the individuals next to me was that we were looking at some type of biological warfare material, an intermediate, and they had more experience. They have more experience than me involving such matters. So, and being that I was new, I was letting them take the lead.
That's great. Now, let's talk a little bit. The second one was, tell us a little bit more in detail about the physical aspects of preparing for an entry into the Sphere.
Fine. Well, we would undergo a medical examination, at least during the early time frame of the introductions, the 92 time frame, 91 to 92, when we were doing introductions. We had regular systematic medicals by a physician. Following that, we would be suited, well, we would be catheterized, plugged, and suited. Communication apparatus was placed on our heads. We had a cooling system set up. It was, for all intents and purposes, it was a spacesuit. It was a total encapsulated suit, something like what you would find in a NASA facility. Not so much something that you would see, well, for instance, at USAMRIID or CDC, that type of level 4 suit. It was more of a regular space-type suit with joints. We were suited up, we were pressurized, and then walked with our cooling system and our hosing down a ramp into the ambassadorial suite. Following that, we were led up a gantry-way, which had been moved into position by the clean sphere, which had been previously rotated up through an iris through the floor. He was held actually below the ambassadorial suite level, and that was raised up as needed. What they did with him down there, he didn't say, and they didn't tell me. It was not a need-to-know issue. Apparently, they dealt with the cleaning of the sphere and all of that down there. The regular housed animal maintenance, as they treated him. We would be led up the gantry-way. The hoses would be hooked into an interior system inside the doorway, which was exterior to the clean sphere. And it was called the exterior system, in fact. But then we would be led in, the door would be closed, and we would be pressurized inside of the gantry-way. Following that, there was a drum system that was set up. Once there was an equal pressurization between the gantry-way and the clean sphere, we would then be told to proceed forward. I would raise a hand in acknowledgement. We were not supposed to talk at the time at all because nothing verbal around the specimen, around the J-rod. Why, I was never told, but we were not supposed to talk around the J-rod. I moved the drum system and re-hooked a secondary set of hosing inside the clean sphere, checked the pressurization, and once that was done, the door to the clean sphere would be closed behind me, and I would presume that the pressurization remained the same in the gantry-way. Following that, I would do my business inside of the clean sphere involving contacting the J-rod and removing the samples.
And what was the reason you were removing samples?
We were removing samples to attempt a treatment, a full diagnosis and a treatment for a paraprotein-related monoclonal gammopathy of uncertain significance type disorder, which had various attributes to it, among which were a cocaine type presence to the J-rod, cocaine syndrome type presence, and certain genetic issues involving chromosome 5 and 17, which led us to Charcot-Marie tooth disorder, and their glycoprotein, their antifreeze glycoprotein problems. They were essentially they were losing heat because of the problems at their axillemal ridges. They were not transmitting the energy, something like a dystrophy. And when the action potential goes down a nerve, well, their action potentials were dying at the synapse. They were also losing energy because there was a demyelination process underway. That demyelination process was, since the Q94 document, was tied to a CMT1A-like problem, the Charcot-Marie tooth problem called PMP22, which is a protein number 22, which an overexpression of that gene causes a greater demyelination. We tied that to the demyelination issue involving the promoters for the PMP22. Those promoters, there's two promoters for it, were selectively deselected with the use of TFOs, or triplex-forming oligonucleotides. It's essentially an ssDNA vector expression system that we're using. Oops.
Doesn't that?
You're staring at me, Bill. I'm sorry.
Bill, one thing. When you're speaking, when you don't sort of make any noises, just nod. That's good.
When I'm not.
Sometimes you're going, E. That's a.
Okay.
Just keep used to nodding. Great.
That's all he's been doing is nodding. I shouldn't.
All right. So do you want to simplify?
I'm sorry, Bill.
No, I don't. Actually, no. I think that's fine.
I'm sorry, Bill.
I actually understood some of it.
That's all right. Doesn't that interfere the demyelination process? Okay, isn't that similar to conditions that humans sometimes have, like, what is it, muscular dystrophy?
Well, yeah, except for he wasn't forming plaques.
Okay.
He wasn't forming plaques. He was simply demyelinating, repairing the demyelination area with the immune system. They've got a cell-mediated immune system, humoral system, just like we have. The cells are different. They've got Philopodia, but very strange looking blood-like material. But it's like it, But that's why we use the term analog so much, because it was different. It was different.
Can we talk a little bit about some generalities around the building in which you worked? The sort of, how many floors it was, or where it was located?
Sure.
How you got there?
You want an experience of Site 4, watch the Andromeda Strain. Except for there's a little more color inside of Site 4. They've got a nice orange stripe on the wall, and they've got a red and blue stripe on the floor, which gives you general directions depending upon the floor you're on, and you can't move without getting stopped anyway. Now we're talking separate to the groom facility here. I'm aware of several floors at the groom facility, and then finally the majority of the hot stuff was taken over to Site 4. We're talking 4 basic levels. The first level, and they're coded 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and then finally where he was stored is 4.5. And that 4.5 designation was painted on the wall for him because 4 and 5 is 9. That's why, in fact, they built 9 hangars on the Galileo and Sidekick levels, the 4.1 level. The 4.2 level contained the looking glass, Alice's glass. In fact, outside of the door for the major facility, there's a white rabbit with a clock. A very large, it's a statue that's probably about that tall, and it's held above the doorway. It's wired above the doorway. The looking glass, I find out, is one of the ERBs. It's an Einstein-Rosenbridge promoter. It uses some form of, this is found out, Jesus Christ, in the last 2 weeks. I'm asking the right questions there, I guess. It's composed of a spherical, spinning, arced, rectangular solid matrix of nickel, cadmium, and barium. There is a spinning disk underneath it, which is supercooled. Into this is injected into the center of these spinning, and I'm not a physicist, spinning disks, is injected an argon gas. Into that is injected some type of repulsion matter. It's a gravity repulsion matter. They are obtaining the gravity repulsion matter from the heavy materials that have been obtained from the J-rods, the 115 variety material. And apparently when they bombard it with enough electromagnetism, this stuff repels gravity, and it turns into some sort of exotic matter. They spin it fast enough, it opens, or they can see through it. And that is, from what I understand, the great prize in what's going on in the world right now, are those devices. Why do you think the British are running around Iraq right now looking for the climatological records that are just happen to be disappeared out of the Baghdad Museum with the rest of the cylinder seals? And you're going to see some cylinder seals today too when I show you some report.
So Dan, does that mean when they're engaging this device in Project Looking Glass?
Yes.
Is this something that they use only for the transmission of information, or can they transport a material object through time?
You know the answer to that. At least you've probably heard some rumor. There have been mistakes. There were mistakes. Animals were attempted to transport from one location to another, the production of 2 of the devices, and they put them in resonance or something like that. I'm not a physicist. I don't know. But I was, in fact, present during a human attempt. The human did not survive. The human was not put in there under duress of any sort. It was a volunteer situation, and the human did not survive. The human did not move. The human stayed where the human was put. But the human changed and, I I don't want to talk about it anymore.
This is an attempt at time travel?
It was an attempt well, in essence, yes. It was a linear, it was a attempt to transport an individual over linear distance, which I understand is the same thing as time travel. If we're talking purely from the Einstein,
Translating time, space.
distance is time.
Like a transporter?
Yeah. From what I understand, they've only used it for information purposes. Aside from that, how they get the information out of it, no clue. I don't know. What specific information they've obtained, I only know of one piece of information, and that is the rush, why the rush is underway to get Lotus done by the 2005 deadline. That in fact this group of J-rods that are not complying with the wishes of the committee and the wishes of the rest of the J-rods and the associated brothers, to put a clamp on them so that they stop their influence within the political structures of our government, including the financial structures. That it is, in fact, their slowing down of the progress to stopping getting these, picking up these little gates that were put together, that would be our downfall in 2012.
Okay. Do you want to say anything further about the Stargates? Or their use in 2012?
Well,
Before we go,
Bill?
let's finish up our third objective when we turn the lights back on.
what can one do for me?
Yes, exactly.
I would be very happy and very relieved to feel as though I was responding to the elected government of the United States of America with what talents God's given me. I'm responsible to the people of the United States of America. The nature of the information to which I'm privy is sensitive enough that the full disclosure of that information would have to be done in an appropriate location and under appropriate circumstances. Certain military application information would have to be done in a closed session milieu for the national security. As I said to you at the Luxor, the Congress knows it's not in control. They know that this is a train, a wild train out of control. And they want that control back. They're not stupid. They know that there are things that are going on down the hall from them that they can't fathom. They deserve to have that back in their hands because that's what they were elected to do. And if we care at all about what's left of our Constitution, they deserve to have that in their hands. Aren't we the masters of our destiny in our country? Aren't we supposed to be? Yes, sir. Supposed to be.
Okay, yeah, let's break for a minute. And you have a question? What questions do you want?
I want you to do it. Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Do you want a break or do you want?
How you doing? It's cool, it's cool. It's
Go
go ahead.
ahead, good. This is what to do with
I hate these lights, but I'm fine.
just a little bit longer. That's something we usually get.
I expect, no, that's fine. I expected the largest light I would have would be a CRT. I was comfortable with that, too.
I'm quite interested in if you could describe for me sort of what it was like when you were first introduced to J-Rod. When you actually sort of walked in, presumably that he was in the clean sphere and you were kind of taken into that sort of part of the facility. What was your reaction when you first saw him?
I thought it was an insect.
Sorry,
That's fine.
we lost the line. We'll take a break.
Okay.
Let's take a break.
Wellington, I went to Dover Grammar School for Boys
Oh, really?
on the hill over Dover.
4 years, or like
Yeah, indeed. We were right above Dover College, and they had all the girls down at Dover College.
Right. Was it a boys' school, I take it?
Yes.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Wellington. We were not allowed to communicate with the females in the village.
We had Grandmaster, Headmaster Coleman.
Oh, right. We called him the master, actually.
Yes.
We called him headmaster there.
Didn't want to call him anything else. He had a cane.
I ran away, actually.
Good man.
Yeah, really. Had enough of that rubbish. Okay, so it's back to that question. Let me just rephrase it for you. Can you describe in detail the first time what it was like to meet this being for the first time?
My original feeling was I was looking at a giant insect. It's the best I can just off the cuff. It looked like a giant insect, being dark brown and hunched in a corner, very insectoid in appearance. It almost looked like it had an exoskeleton. I felt afraid inside because I was always told that monsters weren't real. And now I find out they are, but they live in the heart of men. It was fear, excitement, complete astonishment, because honestly, I thought we were dealing with some sort of monkey, something like an old world ape or the like, but indeed it wasn't. That's what my feeling was. This, I'm not going to lay on and talk about how intellectual I was at the time about it. It scared the hell out of me.
What in terms of actually when you first confronted with the idea that it was, a non-human being, an extraterrestrial, something not of this world?
I'm trying to remember what I was feeling when I was looking at the briefing books. Because even when we were first introduced to the J-Rod, they were him-hawing around as to his origin. Poppycock. I didn't believe it initially. I didn't believe it. However, deep inside, I held open the possibility, because of what happened to me earlier in my life. I held open the possibility that such things could be true. But wouldn't happen to me. Put it to you that way. It's that old, can't happen to you feeling. So to me, it was poppycock. It was rubbish. Until I found out otherwise.
Before going on to the next question, will you talk a little bit about the briefing books? That series?
Sure. They were called King Tuts, and they were basically King. They were all labeled with K's. The ones that I was allowed, they were blue binders. They were all labeled with K's. They had DTIC on the front of them, and I still don't know what DTIC. This is 1987. End of 87, and I still don't know what the letters mean. I haven't done independent searches on the net, or I would be. So if you can tell me, what does DTIC mean? Hey, it's a shot for me to find. You don't know either. They had a white DTIC printed on the front of them. They were marked with several sections, including physiology, general biology, social structure, political structure of the J-Rods, their origins, potential implications for interactions with humankind, cross-contamination issues. They were full of as much information that I could take in during the times that they were allowing me to read them. But I still don't know what that damn DIT or DTIC means. Yeah, they were called King Tuts. They were update books. The one person. This is another reason why I didn't figure that, how Stephen, how I could be promoted to a working group leader above Stephen. Of course, I found out, and I told you why.
Right.
At the time, because he kept the updates. he made sure that all of the King Tuts were updated. He did the briefing films that are still resident at Site 4, or at least the last visit. So, you know, the man of that importance, I couldn't figure out why. But again, that's moot now.
I mean, what was actually in these briefing documents? I mean, can you explain a little bit of the detail?
Sure. Close-knit, very well-ordered society, one which is numerologically based, one which speaks to others that were called brothers, that I now find out are those who left on a spiritual path to another location, to the famed Duat of Orion, the Epsilon Orionis area. Head-to-toe physiology, including real autopsy photographs, not the Santilli kind, but the real autopsy photographs. He can't sue me for that, I hope. He won't raise his head probably, but that was disgusting. The Brookings Institute paper was present, as well as several position papers clarifying the Brookings Institute. However, each of these that I was allowed into, they had separate folders and they had separate clips within them inside these 3-ring binders. And I was told which numbers I was allowed to open up. And they were given to me on a card, and those are the ones that I was allowed to review during the times that I was allowed to review them. Most of the stuff, I mean, they had everything from military applications, the physics of the craft, and I couldn't have cared less. I was more interested in taking in the biology issues. Just doesn't interest me. Aside from the fact from the biophysiological interface between the hand, mind, and the craft, because they have on their hands a number of pads, and there are open nerves which are protected by various glycoproteins, and those glycoproteins are selectively pushed forward or sucked back via capillary action, or they can be through an active fashion pulled back, and it kind of pulls a viscous sheath back and allows the J-rod to have direct interface with the craft. That interested me, although most of it at the time, and still some of it now, I have no understanding of. A lot of it has to do with electronics that I don't pretend to understand. I was most interested in looking at issues involving their histology, histopathology issues, including some autopsy photographs that showed disease processes which were naturally occurring within them, isolations of viral material, to include the protocols for new protocols which were being written as they're working, which is what we're doing. Which is really what we're doing. We're writing new protocols, new procedures as we're working forward. I mean, all of the old standbys are there, everything from electrophoresis to, you know what, to anything. But we're writing new protocols as we're going, because this is not new territory. This is, pardon the pun, alien territory.
How many beings have we had to work with?
I only met one. I am aware of possibly 3. From the reading, and at that time, again, I was so stunned by what I was doing. A lot of it was getting by me. When I read the word extraterrestrial, I tunnel visioned, and when I finally believed and understood that it was in fact an extraterrestrial, numb.
Okay, thank you. Just want to ask you a question about the telepathic communication and nature of it. What is it actually like to communicate with one of these beings telepathically? And what do you hear something in your head? Do you hear images, see images, or?
I could hear my voice No, you can hear yourself think.
Sorry, can you do the film?
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Habit, looking at the people that are. I could hear my voice. However, the cadence, the affect was something that distinguished it other than me. It was no great booming voice from the heavens or anything like that, and I'm glad I do not have a proclivity to hear voices in my head, and have heard none since. But people could probably challenge that. But I could tell that it was somebody other than me, and I could tell because I felt drawn toward the subject that was sending the communication. When the J-Rod spoke with me, prior to the bombardment of the images, it was something that was part of me, but not part of me. I actually felt non-resident for a moment. It was almost an OBE type feeling. And then I could feel myself pull back and experience the sound. It was physical. It was more real than touching an object. And that's the only real time that I felt anything, more physical than physical.
Is there a sort of conveyance of emotion during these communications?
100% emotion. If he was upset, I could feel his pain. It got to the point where, as I was doing the needle introductions, I could feel what he was feeling. So as I would inject the needle under the integument and find my proper location prior to removing the sample, I could feel the needle entering him. So I could feel his feelings.
Were you aware of Bob Lazar any time when you were there? Anything about him?
I saw a guy out on the Mac outside of the Galileo, the 4-1 area. He was barefoot. And he was just staring off in the distance. This is as we were coming in on the helo. And they keep you within a very confined walking area. This is before they started taking the buses. We were choppered in. When I saw him subsequent to that, when he did the famous nap videos, could have been. It could have been. And this was early on. This was. I can't prove it. Okay, and I could not positively identify that being Bob. I am aware of his name being mentioned up there, and it was associated with the term bottle washer, which means an engineer, but not a working group leader or anything of the kind. They would have said a DIR or a for director or a geek. I was called a geek, but his name was mentioned. I heard the name Lazar. I didn't hear Bob. I heard Lazar, and it was not Laser. It was definitely Lazar that I heard. But I never had interaction with him or, in fact, anyone else from Galileo, Sidekick, or Avionics.
How successful were you in assisting this being medically?
Temporary assistance, temporary relief of pain, temporary meaning weeks, temporary adjustment of muscle tone, and then flat out nothing. He got worse. The exacerbation, it got out of control again on him. Since then, there have been, and I'm not certain if he's resident there or not now, there has been progress. We'll just say progress, involving what I was yammering on earlier about the Charcot-Marie Tooth disease, the CMT1A. Their DNA is triplex. And it's not triplex in the way that you would think of a number 3 helix wrapping around the major groove between the 1 and 2 Watson Cricks, the duplex DNA. Their DNA is triplex to the extent that there are what we nicknamed hangers. They look like they're rosettes. The DNAs look like rosettes. They're triplex and then they're braided. It's a supercoiled DNA situation. And we had difficulty even doing anything, let alone anything like a single step markers or anything like that. We had difficulty even sequencing the DNA. Our long interspersed elements are genes which have been shut off, that when combined with the appropriate Hoogsteen base pair milieu, produce a different being, what we were before they made a mistake, a grave mistake.
That leads us to our next question, doesn't it? Where they're from and
What we can do the treaty thing.
They're from here.
the treaty thing, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you did sort of mention this exchange, there was an exchange going? Or
there's been exchanges going on for since they spoke with us in 41.
what's the nature of this sort of exchange?
Um, They wish to find a resolution to the broken resonance between they and the other half of they, the so-called Orions and the Reticulans. They also wish to, for fear of extinction, have a relief of the paraprotein-related problem. And speaking about that just for a moment, we found out that some of the disease process under which they're fighting is a PNA. It's a peptide nucleic acid. I don't know if a protein-associated background nucleic acid. And that protein-associated background is a prion, which goes to one of the things that they wanted me to do at Sweetness. Very dangerous, very dangerous. But the exchange process is to solve the problem to prevent what went wrong in 2012. And the rogue, if you will, group of the J-Rods are not cooperating with that. But a deal has been brokered for the T9 treaty to be held in abeyance until 2005. When that treaty is upped in 2005, once they receive what they've asked for, and they should be receiving a little more, and I've already mentioned some of that material that they're not aware of yet, the PNA material and some of the things that we can do with the oligonucleotides to possibly help facilitate their problems. But once that's upped, they are supposed to come under the auspices of the general agreement between the Committee of the Majority and their respective societies. If so, nothing will get turned on aside from what nature and God is providing us in 2012, and we won't separate. However, they will remain as they are, their future selves as well. They will remain as they are, and we will remain as we are. We can't go back. That's just something that's impossible as far as what they can tell, meaning what the looking glass people and the people that are overseeing the star issue, Starflower and the ERBs and all of that, the Einstein-Rosen bridges.
Can you explain what the fuck you're talking about?
somewhat.
I kind of get it because I've been watching the tapes and stuff, but it's so compacted, what you just said is so compacted in your own.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I'm just saying, let's stretch it out a little bit. We might want to begin by being specific. It sounded like you were talking more about what they were going to get in this exchange, and we're kind of curious as to what are we going to get in this exchange?
Well, we're going to get not wiped out.
Okay, what's the problem we're trying to solve vis-a-vis getting wiped out?
The biggest problem is to make sure that I'm supposed to look at you.
Yeah, sorry.
The biggest problem is to make sure that there are no human-created ERB
Stargates?
machines.
Machines?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds science fiction-ish,
I know.
okay, and you know, it's hokey sounding, okay? To make sure that there are none of them in existence which can automatically turn on when the next age begins on December 21st, 2012. We are apparently going to cross over the plane of the galaxy, which there is a dense network of wormholes. There is supposed to be some sort of enlightenment, whether or not that's the Christ event, or whether that's a burp on a Sunday morning. I don't know what that's going to be. I'm not enough of a scholar in that area to figure that out, to know. I do know that failure would result in too much energy being directed at our planet from our star. And hence my interest in looking at the pretty pictures above the sun, the corona of the sun. It's the pace at which these unusual forms are being produced is increasing.
Are we entering an area as we approach this equatorial plane of the galaxy? Okay. Are we entering an area where there is a greater concentration of dust that can
So I've heard.
surround the sun?
So I've heard.
Okay. I have been reading about this, and this is similar to a situation that happens with a classification of star called T-Tauri stars, where there's a lot of dust gathered around, and what happens is that the star, the sun in this particular case, increases its radiation in the infrared and the hard X-ray areas, and there's greater solar flare activity. And in the past, evidently, if we're to believe the mythologies, there was conflagration on our planet. So would we be in danger of a heat and conflagration?
That would make sense, and that sets well with what I heard, yes.
Okay.
That
Then
is what we're in danger of, that, as well as a large electromagnetic burst from the sun, which will upset our electromagnetic, our poles.
All right. Now, what they're calling ERBs, okay, now called wormholes. We'll talk about the wormholes. You're talking about two different, we're talking about natural, there's a number of natural occurring wormholes.
There are a number of nodes on the planet, from what I'm understanding, that naturally are sensitive electromagnetically. I don't know. Okay, they're naturally sensitive to the space through which we pass.
Okay.
These nodes activate spontaneously when we pass through them, or can be struck with electromagnetism and be temporarily opened.
And what happens if we use a machine to open an artificial wormhole?
Well, it's
Is
two different
this-
things.
okay.
One, they're trying to put, well, they have been putting, in fact, Saddam did put two of them together in Iraq, which conformed to the ancient cylinder seals, which are now missing from the library or the museum in Baghdad. Obviously, somebody looted them. But they went to Tinian Island, by the way. Thought you'd know. That's where they went first. After that, I've got no clue.
Mhm.
But they were looted by the best, put it to you this way.
Now, haven't you been investigating a site where there is a natural
Indeed, Frenchman Mountain.
Frenchman Mountain, and your work continues on Frenchman Mountain?
Yes, it does. Yes, it
Okay.
does. Our remote viewing unit first brought the notion that this could be a wormhole situation.
Mhm.
And yes, we've employed remote viewers for it. Since then, there have been occurrences at the mountain that are far and afield from the research that I would be doing for the Lotus. There's two separate things, just absolutely two separate things. I originally went there with a team to do an endosymbiotic research program. I was trying to nail down, you read Lynn Margulis's book about the Acarian mastodon. I was trying to nail down information about that, and also I had presumed that we were from panspermia. So I was looking for an artifact. I was looking for an artifact that might interact selectively with ourselves, and fell into the issue involving the Ganesh particle, etc. But we had a flare that passed across the surface of some algae during a test. And we just found out, by the way, that flare, and it's included in the report, that flare is associated to the speed that a Ganesh particle passes. So it was a Ganesh particle. It was actually overly flaring on us that day. But it was on the May 31st visit of 2001 to Frenchman's Mountain.
Okay.
Frenchman's Mountain. If you have access to more reports than I'm aware of, anyway. I don't remember the report number, but
Can you articulate for us a little bit more in specific detail about the relationship between future and present for these beings?
we're in a chimera.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm.
Just the basics.
What we see, for instance, I mentioned earlier ruins on the moon and Mars. You're aware I was involved in, probably you're aware that I was involved in Inca City research, so-called Inca City. That's because the J-Rod showed me that as an image, but didn't show me that as an image of a dead city, showed me that as the image of a future city, a living, breathing society, post-damage here, post-catastrophe. We are literally looking at things that are present, but according to a linear timeline, haven't been built yet. Now, if that isn't confusing, say you want me to explain what the hell I was talking about, if that is not confusing, it confuses me.
Well, you're the best man for the job right now. Tell us.
Look with the lights. According to the doctrine of the convergent timeline paradox, the J-rods, to solve their paraprotein problem, used these ERBs to go back in time. And some of them were worshipped. They were treated as gods, and temples were built for them, and et cetera, et cetera. The so-called Nubis Ra, that sort of business. Again, I'm not, this is getting science fiction-y because it sounds like poppycock. But this is what I got in exchange for the information that he gave me, so what the hell. Literally, there are two or more concurrent timelines that we're living in. Two separate existences. And what that means exactly, that's what I read. What that means exactly, I'm not sure. I'm intellectually limited in that area. I got to be in philosophy, but I'm intellectually limited in that area. And I don't want to present something that I don't know is fact either. that would be not right. But to solve their problem, they messed around with us even earlier than earlier when they had been treated as gods. They went back, treated as gods, went back before. In other words, they can apparently select the timeline. How they do that, again, no clue. They manipulated our original DNA and removed a single strand from us. This made us able to mate with another experiment which was underway at the time called Neanderthalensis. And yes, I know there is no genetic evidence concerning the mating between the Neanderthals and the other brand, if you will, of our kind. That's because all of the genes have been turned off. Any of the unusual mating sequences aside from retroviruses that tagged along were turned off as part of our long intermittent sequences. They're part of the great repeats. And in fact, the Neanderthals, take a look at the number of long interspersing elements that they have in their genome, and that will bear out what I'm saying.
I think there's a new article in the new scientific special edition, Scientific American, by a woman anthropologist who says her research shows that Homo sapiens did mate with Homo neanderthalis at some time.
Okay.
So, I mean, whatever research she wrote about seems to bear out what you're saying.
Well, it has been believed that the crossbreeding mismatched our chemical and our structural architecture neurophysiologically, and that was one of the primary promoters for the problem that the J-rods now suffer. That it
Yes. But I had mine security because in case
right.
it wasn't.
We're kind of wrapping up, and we're kind of in the middle of trying to have the opportunity. It's a good opportunity to talk about this time. And you were talking about going 2 different points of going back in the past, one and then one earlier. And what we haven't gotten to yet, though, is sort of a general description of what we're talking about here, in more in general terms.
What the doctrine is.
Right.
This is ostensibly for the public.
It's the paradox of killing your grandfather. It's the paradox of killing your grandfather. If you kill your grandfather, do you cease to exist? Michio Kaku, from what I can glean from his work, would say no. Would say no. It would cause 2 separate universes, 2 separate time streams. But in accordance with the doctrine that I read, his theory doesn't take into account that those 2 time streams could occur simultaneously. That the reality could be mixed, which is why there are so many confusing data sets involving everything from fossil finds to strata. Why there are so many conundrums involving the speed of planetary formation. There was a recent thing out that I had read about a planet being formed in a very short period of time, much shorter than what they had accounted for the accretion theory. And the way that it came through to me was it was a Keystone DCTP flyer, because I'm in on some of the loop, no pun intended, that these things are happening simultaneously. that a planet can form at one rate and the reality can mix such that we can perceive it having formed at a separate rate. And go back and look at it another time and have another perception because the realities are actually mixed.
And they're also now saying that the Earth appears to be older than they thought it was.
Mm-hmm. And its age, I have no clue. One would have to ask the Almighty.
So you could look at something, are you saying that you could look at something one day and measure it, and look at it the next day, and the measurements can be different because a different timeline is then come into play?
Yeah. And biologists, chemists, well, natural philosophers call that error. And if something falls outside of their acceptable range of error, they call it non-written because they would call it non-publicized and then they wouldn't get their funding. That's the nature of the big business of science. I mean, ask a guy associated with my mentor at SUNY. His name was Carl, and he had a little problem in Louisiana, we'll say that. He jumped ship, and he wanted to measure some things having to do with free radicals. And this will give you an idea what happens if you piss the wrong people off, or you don't get enough funding. He had funding 10 days prior to, he had lost his extramural funding, and he had funding 10 days prior to his separation. They separated him anyway. If you don't show the progressive upkeep of the funding, you're not there anymore. And it goes much deeper and much wider than publish or perish.
So again, in terms of a clear explanation, what is it we're trying to, in the treaty that we have, what is it we're trying to work with, or they're trying to work with us to?
100% cooperation, 100% cooperation in getting rid of the ERBs in exchange for 100% cooperation to solve their physical problem and to attempt their rejoining. And that's a big word, big pool at the end that I just said right there. Where that will go, I'm not sure. However, the project under which I'm working right now may help some. May help some. It's a electrophysiological resonance which is present around, in, and through our DNA, which it is believed by some of the more esoteric people to come via the supernal triad, the divine Sephira, the tree of life, which holds us together as intellectual and emotional beings. It is that dualism that keeps us in sync with the universe.
Could you say a little bit about your sort of current conditions and where you're working now? Anything of that sort of what's going on with you at the moment, work-wise?
Well, as in environmental, my environment, I am in an environment of I'm not going to get personal with the issues here. I'm in an apartment environment. There are children around me, which is wonderful. I direct the project from that location. Do some minor microscopy work from there. Nothing of a hazardous nature, any more than dust would be hazardous to you. In times of need, I'm transferred to various facilities, not worldwide, but nationwide, and work within those facilities under whatever the protocols that we need to complete. Those facilities are as wide-ranging as Dulce, the Shady Rest, Site 4, the Groom Lake facility, Brookhaven, the Los Alamos area, the T5 section proper, and recently in this little event in Alamo Canyon. I had to show, as well as give testimony, I had to show some evidence when I was there to a mirror. They were sitting on the other side of the mirror, so I hear. As God is my witness, there maybe wasn't anybody on the other side of that damn mirror. But they told me they were.
Demonstrate results.
Demonstrate data, yes. Show data sets relative, Project Lotus, and the 3 portions of it which are simultaneously underway.
So you've been involved in this exclusively for 20 years, 15 years?
Since '86. Well, I played with local jobs around town.
Right.
You had an environmental company, right? Kane Environmental or something?
Yeah, that's when I was carrying the name Crane.
But you're pretty much exclusively engaged in a project which is fundamentally tied to the future of our species.
It is. It is, fundamentally. This project, without getting too deep into it, I've been accused of rambling by people before about it, but without getting too deep into it, this project is an all-encompassing attempt to grab for the brass ring and making sure that that brass ring is not the fruit of the tree of life. I'll grab just until we get to that point. Aside from that, I'm not going to try to barge my way into past the East Gate of Eden. The people who do that get hurt, at least so I've heard.
And you're bridging what we have traditionally called physics and metaphysics, it sounds like, into one continuum. Because some of these you're talking about are what are tied to what
Well, indeed.
physics refers to.
Indeed. And not even just pop metaphysics, but the ancient esoteric sciences. For millennia, we've conceived of the supernatural and that supernatural's interaction with humankind. What we are seeing in this project is that it's not so much supernatural, it's natural, and it's been there with us all along, and we just haven't taken the time to look. In fact, our procedures have been mutually exclusive. Laboratory procedures have been mutually exclusive to find what we found. They would destroy or mask over the process that we're now beholding. These particles have the ability, in essence, to bend light. And in the report, you'll see a series of images that show clearly where the particle is changing into the shape of a yeast cell, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. It's masking. Closer it gets to it, the more it masks. So if it passes by it, it looks like it. And then when it gets within close proximity, the wolf in sheep's clothing steps out and it does its business. Meanwhile, the average investigator, biological investigator, has ceased looking because the protocol has moved on. He or she has scanned a slide and has seen 2 eukaryotic cells and has moved on.
One last question for you, then we'll be around. Gives you time to relax and get back.
That means the lights go off.
Tell me, the lights off. Tell me exactly in your own mind how you want to get out. How do you want to see it go down? Tell Bill. How do you want to see it go down?
First of all, that's a deep question because I don't know where this is, how this arrangement was made today.
Neither do I.
So getting out is a loaded term right now. I don't know where it's going to go. But what I do foresee is if that same elected government is interested in the information, I do see myself providing that to my elected government as I've been sworn to do so. Now, whether or not I'm prevented from doing so, we'll find out. Again, we all have to go sometime. But I see that as the logical step, because once the information is presented to the elected government, and once I am no longer officially held, and it's not just the information involving the Lotus, there are military applications associated with it as well, biological applications. Once that information is no longer a constraining factor, freedom. Whether or not I'm yelling it on the chopping block, I don't know. But freedom nonetheless.
Do you know who specifically you think you should be talking to?
No. No. I would think that, oh God, I wouldn't know which Senate or congressional committee would need to bring me under their authority. I don't know which one. There's got to be one with the right name on it. And once that's done, under the appropriate circumstances, I will tell them everything that I know. So help me God.
Maybe we can help you find out who that is.
That's right.